Saints was a faith in the coming Jesus, where now our faith is in the Jesus who has come and is coming again. And one of the things we notice is that God works through imperfect people. And when we went through chapter 11 in our last series, we saw these heroes, and their faith was emphasized, but we know, and we pointed out some of the times, that these people had a lot of issues in their lives. A lot of times before they came to know God and begin following Him, sometimes even after they began following Him, they made a lot of mistakes and bad decisions and things like that. And it happens. But in chapter 11, the author just calls us to faith and gives us these examples. And as we start this series, Focus, over the next 3 or 4 weeks, we're gonna break this chapter down. I want to encourage you all to focus on Jesus. Focus on Jesus. And a lot of times we just get our priorities out of order, and we tend to put our eyes on the things that are not as important. And there's nothing more important than Jesus. And so we just need to focus on Him. And that's what I want to try to help you do as we work through this chapter. As we live our lives, we're faced with many challenges, and there have been times when, just like these early Jewish Christians, these Jews who began to follow Christ, and as we've mentioned many times, we're thinking about giving up and going back to the old ways. A lot of times when we find that, we face challenges, and there'll be times when we just want to give up, and begin to wonder if living for Jesus is worth it. And if you've not been there in your journey with Christ, you will. There'll be a time when you want to give up your role, whatever it is. If you're a pastor, there'll be times when you want to quit. If you're a member of the praise team, there'll be times when you're like, there's just too much criticism, too much work, I'm just going to quit. If you're serving in the welcome area, or working with children, or preparing food, or helping set up, or cleaning, or doing outreach, or whatever your ministry is, or whatever it is that you do for Christ, Satan wants nothing more than for you to quit. You know that? He wants you to quit. He wants you to give up. And that's the easiest thing to do, is just say, you know what, I'm done. Y'all ever said that? I'm done. I'm done. Right? We do it, don't we? We're like, oh, I'm done. But most of the time, we're not really done. We're just kind of, sometimes, unfortunately, we mean it. And that can go a lot of places. And so, when we look at Scripture, a lot of times we see athletic events used to help describe the Christian life. And here in chapter 12, we see that again. There's an analogy of a race. These guys were probably familiar with the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games started about 778 years before BC, and they might have been even more familiar with a type of Olympic game called the Isthmian Games. And I believe that was in Ephesus that they did those, and they were Olympic Games. So they would have been familiar with it, probably, and probably pretty popular. Paul wrote about races, and whoever wrote Hebrews obviously here is using this as an analogy. When I was in high school, let me say this first of all, nobody really likes to run. When Sophie was running cross country and track and stuff, I think it was you guys. I saw some T-shirts that said, maybe it wasn't you, but I've seen some T-shirts for runners that says, my sport is what your sport does for discipline, basically, because when you play other sports, you run when you do something wrong. And so when I was playing baseball in high school, one of our assistant coaches, he disciplined me for breaking a team rule. That's all I'm going to say about that, okay? But after practice, he wanted me to run 20 flagpoles. And if you don't know what that is, a flagpole, you start at the home plate, you run all the way to the flagpole, and then back to home plate. That's one, okay? And the shortest distance was right field, about 315, 320 feet. And so, that's like running the distance of the football field twice. There and back, that's one. I had to do it 20 times. And so I was excited about that, but nobody was timing me, and the assistant coach had to leave, and so the head coach stayed around. His coach Rhodes, and all y'all know him, but I didn't agree with the discipline because the rule that I broke wasn't. It had been overlooked for a long time. I'll just put it that way. Coach Rhodes, head coach, wasn't really worried about it. And as soon as the assistant coach left, after I ran 5 or 6 poles, Coach Rhodes hollered at me and told me to come on. But I ignored it because I was so angry. I just kept running. And he got his cart pulled around, he kept shooting at me and waving at me to come on. I just ignored it. I think it started raining. But being as stubborn as I was, I just kept running and I finished my 20 flat laps. At some point, I'm not sure when it was, I decided that I was going to finish that course that was set before me, and there was nothing that was going to deter me from it. I was just going to do it, and it was out of anger, really. I mean, it was just out of frustration. But here's what I want you to say. I want to encourage you to become determined to run your race of faith and determined to finish the course that God set before you out of your enduring love for Jesus. Not out of anger, but just be determined to not quit and not give up, even when others may encourage you to. I want to encourage you to run your race of faith to win. Run it like you want to win it. Never give up. And one of the ways that we'll see that we can do this is by keeping your eyes, keeping your focus on Jesus. And so today, let's read God's Word together. Hebrews chapter 12. I'll read verses 1 through 4. And the title of the sermon today is Never Give Up. Never give up. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. God's Word says this: Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted. In your struggle against sin, you have not resisted to the point of shedding your blood. That's a weird way to end it. That's where we're ending. That's the Word of God. Let's just bow. Father, thank you for your Word this morning. Lord, thank you for your encouragement, for your Holy Spirit who fills us and indwells us to finish the race that you set before us with your power. Lord, help us to do that in Jesus' name. Amen. So, have you ever wanted to quit something? Ever wanted to just give up? Some of you have, I know. We all have, I'm sure. When things get tough, it's easy to just want to quit a job, go home, sit on the couch. That's an easy thing to do. Don't pay very well, but it's easy, But when schoolwork becomes difficult, it's easy just to drop out, even if you've got a full ride. Sometimes you want to quit. It's easy to get discouraged and just say, "Oh, I'm done. I can't do this." And sometimes following Jesus gets tough, and we wonder, is it worth our time? And so we wonder, is our quiet time, is it really worth it? That personal time I spend with Jesus, do I really need to do that? What about our church gatherings, our worship gatherings, our small groups. And I really need to start giving that stuff up. Slowly, miss a Sunday, miss another one, come back, miss 2 more. Next thing you know, we're missing weeks and months. And, we're not affiliated with anybody in the church anymore. And, we've quit our volunteer work, and we've quit doing outreach, and we slack. And the next thing we know, we're so far away from Jesus and our faith family. We're destitute and in trouble, and that's what happens. But God has put you where you are. He has put you where you are. Everything that you experience in your life, the things you go through, the things that are toughest, those things are not a surprise to God. He's designed you to persevere and endure through every one of those things. He made you so that you can. We don't always do that, but you can because of Him. And I want you to see that He loves you. He wants you to fulfill the calling that He has for you. Each one of us has a unique gifting and calling and life to be lived for the glory of God. And I want you to find that for you, and I want you to live it and run that race with determination and perseverance and never quit and finish a winner. I want that for all of us, And so, don't you want that? If you love Jesus, that's what you want probably more than anything. A lot of times we just want to quit and do our own thing. That's easy. But it doesn't glorify God. It doesn't bring us joy. And it doesn't give us purpose. And ultimately, it takes away our pleasure. Some of you know that from experience. And, so when we look at this text, if you dig deep enough, just like we read it, you'll find that the main verbal clause here is, if you parse it, if you, you diagram your sentence, you'll find that the main verb is this: let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. That's what it is in the ESV. And so a lot of translations, you can translate that word endurance with perseverance. I like the word perseverance better. I think it displays the idea of what's going on here. Let us run with perseverance the race, because there is a struggle. Endurance to me just can mean just your stamina. Perseverance means to make it through some suffering and some trials and some differences. Maybe it's just me, but that's the idea. And so that's the main verb. And that's how, but when we look at how the chapter starts out, he says there's some supporting ideas. And I'm going to point out 3 of them, and one of them is going to be subdivided. There's going to be 4 points to the sermon today. So most of the time there's just 3. Sometimes there's more. Sometimes there's less. Today there's 4. But there's 3 main supporting clauses. I'm going to break the second one in 2. But he says, so let us run with perseverance this race. Number 1, being surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. Maybe you noticed that. That's the first one. And then the second one, he says, laying aside this extra weight and the sin that clings to us so closely. And the last one, he says, is to let us run this race with perseverance, looking to Jesus. So that's what he's trying to communicate. And that's what I want to try to help you see today. Is I want to share with you 4 actions that you can take that can help you run your race, live your life for Jesus in a way that helps you persevere through all the trials and finish that race and never give up. Number 1 is this: remember the faith of your predecessors. That's the first thing he points out. It's the first thing he mentions in the text. When you look at verse 1, he says, therefore. And just as I've told you guys many times before, anytime you see the word therefore, you have to back up in the text and see what it's there for, right? And so we know, because we just preached through chapter 11, that he's talking about all these heroes and their faith and how they live their lives. And he's telling us to have faith. And so he's talking about them. And he says, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great a cloud of witnesses, let us run with perseverance the race that's set before us. He's talking about all these people who've gone before us, all these predecessors. And the word witness here is the word martyron, which is the word we get the word martyr from. And so it's carried on to mean not just witness for us, but a lot of these folks died for their faith, didn't they? And a lot of them died in their faith. But all these witnesses are people who've lived a life of faith, looking to Christ, willing to give their lives for Him, many of whom did that, but now their lives are complete. They've left a testimony. Remember, that's one of the things we said that faith does. It leaves a testimony. And so they've left this testimony of faith, this witness to their faith, and they have known the difficulties of following Jesus. And we can go back into the Old Testament and we can read about all these folks. And in our lives, there's even people maybe that are outside of Scripture that we've experienced who've lived dynamic lives of faith. And we've seen that example, and we can remember those who've gone before us and who fought many of the same battles that we fight. And we can be encouraged with the fact that they didn't give up. They fought the fight. They kept on moving. And if they could do that, then so can we. And so we're not the first ones to suffer. We're not the first ones to get discouraged. Others have done that. So we need to remember the faith of our predecessors. You know, a lot of times when we look and see how someone else handled something rightly, it can help us determine how to handle what we're doing. Most of you know I grew up on a farm where my mom grew up out here in McNeese County, and when I was young in the summer, we used to use cane poles and it's a fishing line, and the creek widest point maybe 15 feet, 20 feet, widest point, average depth probably right in half, but a lot of brim and snell darters, and every now and then a little bass, a little type of brook trout type of fish. I don't know for sure what it was, but we just fished. And my mom's brother had 3 sons, all older than me, and sometimes when we get to roaming around the farm, they'd just jump the creek. And the oldest 2 would, and leave me and the younger, Mike, we'd be on the other side. We didn't have but one bridge. And it was way back at the front of the property. So we had a couple other places where it dipped down, spread out, and got real narrow, where we could wade across it. And so we'd run by one of them places, and sometimes we'd find a log that we could cross, we dropped a few of them. Whew, them things get slippery, and depending on how high it was. And but one day we were out, and I don't remember what we were doing, but sure enough, Jeff and Tim jumped the creek. Next thing I knew, Mike. And I was standing there, and I thought, whoa, but this has never happened before, And just in my mind, I thought, wait a minute. Even though Mike was, a little older than me, I knew what he can do, I can do. So I gave it a shot. Man, I cleared that thing, landed on the other side. There wasn't no more walking around for me anymore. I knew a couple places where I could jump and I could clear it. And so I had that memory, and I knew, and I looked to them. And so the reason I had the courage to go on and jump was because I had witnessed the success of those who were like me have success. Follow me? And all these people of faith that we have in our lives, that we see in Scripture, they're just like us. Just sinners who desperately needed Jesus, who decided to obey God. That's who they were. And you can be that too. And so we need to remember the faith of our predecessors. all those who've gone before us. And if you do that, it can help you to persevere. And so when you get discouraged and you want to leave the church or give up on your calling, remember the faith of those who have been where you are and didn't quit and finished strong. And you follow that example. Okay, that's number one. Number two, not only should we remember those who've gone before us, those predecessors, the faith of our predecessors, but something really important for us to do is we need to remove the hindrances that are unnecessary. Yeah, now we're starting to meddle, right? Yeah. That's what he's talking about. Look what he says in verse 1. Most of this sermon is going to be concentrated here in verse 1, but he says, let us also lay aside every weight. Now, the word for weight can mean extra body weight, which we don't want to talk about that, but it can also mean a heavy burden. There's something you carry with you. It's just a burden. And so, if you're going to run in a race, you don't carry your backpack of all your changes of clothes and uniforms and shoes and all that with you. You put it to the side and then you run, don't you? And so I think this is kind of the imagery that the author's trying to help us understand. You never see these runners when they come to the starting lines in the Olympics. What you see is they go up there, they take off that long sleeve shirt, and then they got them pants that they just go, man, them things come off, and then they just got the shorts on, and they throw all that stuff to the side, right? And that's what they do. And, they wouldn't think of wearing, haven't you ever seen them wear those things in the race? They don't do that. It'd be a killer. I mean, the races are so tight. A lot of them even shave their body hair off so it don't slow them down. Did you know that? They do. Shave their heads. You wonder why someone's bald? It's because they don't want their hair slowing them down. That's the reason mine's like it. So, all right. So y'all know that's not true, but anyway, just in case I never need to run, I've already got that covered. But anyway, but those things, the things that they get rid of, they may not necessarily be bad things, I mean, the warm-up clothes aren't bad, they're good. They keep your muscles warm, they keep you relaxed and ready, they're good things. But when it's time to run the race, they're not for the race. And there comes a time, folks, when we have to set some things aside that are unnecessary when God calls us to do things that He wants us to do. Now, I can't tell you what that is all the time. A lot of times that is just between you and God, but it's all those things that may divert your attention and sap your energy, anything that keeps you living for Jesus and fulfilling His calling. Anything that's going to hinder your progress. Your career may keep you from pursuing God's calling. The desire for possessions can consume you and keep you from using the resources God gives you for His glory. And instead you use that to fill your own pleasures and your hobbies. They can take you away and we can go on and on. And we can guess and we can speculate, but sometimes the hindrances, they may be personal relationships. They might be selfish goals. Scripture tells us about 3 individuals who came to Jesus and they wanted to follow Jesus. And the things didn't work out for them because they were unwilling to remove unnecessary hindrances from their lives. Look at it with me in Luke chapter 9. It says, and they went on to another village, in verse 56, and they were going along the road. And someone told Jesus, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said, foxes have holes, and the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay His head. Okay, so here Jesus says, basically, if you're going to follow me, you have to leave your home. And some nights, you might not have a place to stay. You're not going to have a home anymore. Okay? That's what He told me. An unnecessary hindrance for some calling that Jesus has for some people. Number two, he said another one, I told another one, follow me, but he said, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. Seems like a reasonable task, except for this guy's father's still alive, most likely. And he wants to go home and stay and live there and know his dad and have a relationship with his dad at home until he dies, and then he's going to follow Jesus. That's how most commentaries look at it. And so Jesus says, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go proclaim the kingdom of God. And so Jesus is calling him away to do something. Another said, I will follow you, Lord, but he said, let me first say farewell to those at my home. And Jesus said, no one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God. Now, time and time again, I don't know that I completely understand all these, but basically Jesus is saying, look, if you're going to follow me, follow me. You know, if you're going to go home, go home. But you can't do both. You know? And there's a lot of things that Jesus calls you to do, but you have to leave some stuff behind in order to do it. You can't do both. And that's the kind of thing that the author's talking about here that we have to get rid of. I remember watching a yacht race on a show one time, and I tried to Google this, but Google don't know everything, I'm telling you. I saw it, I'm pretty sure it was in a movie. It may have been real. It's been so long ago, I don't remember, but it just came to my mind when I was thinking about this. And y'all know a yacht, right? A yacht is like a sailboat, right? Am I right about that? Okay. It don't matter. But there was this race, and it was like, sailboats. I believe it was yachts, some kind of yacht. I don't even know if they call them races, but they were racing it somewhere, I think, in the Northeast. And there was this one featured yacht and its crew. And they were racing and they were falling behind. And what they did was they started taking cargo from the ship. They thought, hey, let's unload the ship, because we can go faster with less weight. And so they started throwing stuff over it. They're throwing everything over. They're throwing furniture over chairs, they're throwing the fridge out, they start throwing the groceries out, because at that point, nothing else mattered. They wanted to finish that race and they wanted to win. So they're throwing anything that's not, basically, I think they said, anything that's not attached, get rid of it, right? And so they started throwing stuff out, and the next thing you know, the boat starts gaining speed. And they start passing some of these other yachts, and they're getting closer and closer to the leader. And they get up and they're kind of neck and neck with the leader. The leader's still right out front of them, and they're not gaining anymore. They're just kind of holding their own, and they're staying there. And so what happens the next thing, two of the crew members just jump out of the boat. They make it lighter. And what happens is then the yacht gains enough speed to just overtake the lead and win the race. And so I think what this text is telling us is sometimes maybe you might need to do the same thing. That type of thing. Remove some things from your life that keep you from living the life of faith that God's called you to live. Anything that comes before Christ and His causes must be laid aside to run effectively for the glory of God. And so that's what he's getting at. You want to finish your life of faith to win. Remember the faith of your predecessors and remove any unnecessary hindrances from your life. And the third action you can take is this. Repent. Oh, yep, there's that word. Repent from the sin that may cause you to stumble. Repent from the sin that causes you to stumble. This is the one, probably one of the ones that we have the most trouble with. And I like the way the New King James translates this part of it. It says, let us lay aside every weight and the sin. It seems like there is an article here, and they've omitted it from the ESV. And a lot of times those articles are fluid, especially in the Greek language. But it seems like the article is almost necessary here. And I think in context, but we need to remove all sin. But I think the author here is trying to help us understand that we need to remove maybe a specific sin. And so, and maybe it's the sin of unbelief. I've read a lot of commentaries, that's what they think it is, but because the sin of unbelief is the one that'll send you to hell, you know? And so we got to remove that one. But I think here he's talking to folks who are followers of Jesus. They've already believed, and so I'm not 100% sure, but what he gives us is, this picture. He says this sin that clings so closely to us. And so he's given us this picture of flapping clothing, around a person when he's running. And, in the first century, everybody wore some kind of robe, didn't they? Long robes all the way down to the ankles. And so, can you imagine trying to run in one of those things? I mean, I don't know how wide they were, but I mean, at some point you're going to get your feet caught up and stumble. And so, I'm sure it would be hard. Paul writes to the Ephesians in chapter 6, he's talking about girding up your loins. And one of the things they talk about is, they would reach down and grab hold of the back of that skirt tail, and they'd pull it up to the front and stick it in their belt, and more or less sort of make a pair of breeches out of it, and that frees you up a little bit to run. And they would do that for battle and things like that because, well, most of you ladies know, a tight, long skirt or dress, it's hard to move in it, I imagine. but anyway, and so that's the image he's giving us, and he's saying we need to get rid of that, that thing that's going to ensnare us and trip us up. And he calls it the sin. And it may be something different for you than it is the person sitting next to you. It may be different for me. Everybody's got that sin. And you probably know what it is. It's the one that gives you so much trouble. It's the one that you've probably spent time weeping about. It's the one that has costed you some important things maybe in your life. It's the one, most importantly, that's keeping you from really fulfilling the calling that God has for you. And you've got to get rid of that. You've got to turn away from that sin. That's what he's talking about right here. When the girls were little, they used to play dress up a lot in Christy's formal gowns, and inevitably, because they didn't fit, they were too big, from time to time, they would get tangled up. And that sin that you will not give up is doing the same thing. It's causing you to stumble. It's knocking you down. It's bruising your life. It's bruising your soul. It's keeping you from fulfilling what God has for you. And folks, sin doesn't fit. It's going to mess you up. And nothing will discourage you more than the sin that'll trip you up and drag you into the pit of misery. That's going to discourage you more than anything. And so, Peter writes in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11, he says, "Beloved, I urge you as travelers or sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh which wage war against your soul." And that's the kind of urgency I think that we need here. There's a warning here for us to get rid of that sin. We must rid ourselves of the sin that will cause us to fall. And a lot of times they may seem harmless, but sin's never harmless. And the more we keep it around, the more dangerous it gets. And so, the writer of Hebrews says that you must lay aside that sin that clings to you. Don't let it cling. Kill it. Get rid of it. Jesus has already killed it, as a matter of fact. He's already conquered sin. All you have to do is push it away. That's all you have to do with the power of God, through the Spirit of God. So you want victory? Remember the faith of your predecessors, remove unnecessary hindrances, and repent from the sin that causes you to stumble. And finally, one more action, and this is how we wrap things up. Focus on the prize you may receive. I'm just going to let out there that prize is Jesus. He is our prize. because when you get Him, you get everything. And so he says, looking to Jesus. And then he talks about who Jesus is. And you know, and this one action kind of ushers in the race. When you focus on Jesus, then it's easier to repent of sin. It's easier to remove those hindrances from your life. And it's easier to remember all those who follow Jesus. And so when you focus on Jesus, everything kind of comes into focus. But look what he says here. He says, looking to Jesus. And so the text says here that he's a founder of our faith. Now that's a good reason to focus on him. He's our leader, and we need to follow him. He's the one who made the Christian faith. He's the one who, and he set the course, and we're to follow hard after him. And it also says he's the perfecter of our faith. He's the first one to finish the race perfectly, without sin, isn't he? If you want to talk about predecessors, let's look to Jesus, because he's the only one who's lived the life of faith without sin. And so we can look to him. And then he talks about how Jesus knew the joy set before him. And so he was able, Jesus, one of the reasons he was able to endure his suffering and persevere through all his trials and troubles, through the scourging and the mocking and the cross of crucifixion, is because he knew the resurrection that awaited for him. That was the joy that was set before him. He knew that there was a better day coming. He looked forward to that. And folks, we can look forward to that too. You know, we can persevere through trials and tribulations because we know there is a resurrection. There's going to be eternity with Jesus. And so we can look at it the same way he did. We know the joy that's set before us, and that's an eternity with him. Jesus knows persecution. He knows pain. Jesus knows trials. And he's perfectly endured and perfectly finished. And he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God, it says here in our text. His work is finished. He's our reward. And the rest we have in him is worth the cost of anything we have to give up in this race. Amen? It's worth it all. And so the writer then tells us in verses 3 and 4 basically to look to him and consider Jesus and his life so that we don't grow weary and give up. See what he says? He says, consider him who endured from sinners hostility against himself. So we're focusing on Jesus, and we're looking at him, and we're seeing that he's the author and the founder of our faith, and he's the perfecter of our faith, and he endured all this stuff from all these people so that we don't get tired and weary and give up. He went through all that so we can go through it and not quit. Did you know that? That's what the text says. Oh man. And then verse 4 basically reminds us that we've not died yet. He says, you've not shed your blood yet. Keep going. You know? He said, that's what he's saying basically. He said, your struggle against sin, you've not resisted yet to the point of shedding your own blood. And so you're comparing yourself to Jesus. Just keep going. Keep going. Jesus can help you. Focus on him. And where we have our focus is really important. When growing up on the farm, we used to plant tobacco, and as I got a little older, I got involved in a little bit, some of the different roles of growing, planting the tobacco. And we had a setter that we put on the back of our tractor, and there was two people that rode on there, and somebody had set a box of tobacco plants up there, and there was water, a big jug of water. It'd run down, it put the water in, and as we drove along, you'd reach up, you'd put one down, and you just did it pretty much as quick as you could. And kind of opened it up and you closed it back. And some of y'all have done that, it looks like, from experience. But I remember one year as I got a little bit older, I got to drive the tractor. And I don't remember how old I was, but I remember I got on the tractor, I was all excited, and I kept looking back. And when I got to the end of the road, my road kind of looked like this, And my Uncle Junior and my mom's brother, and I pulled off into the edge of the field there in the grass, and I started turning around. He said, all right. He said, come here. He says, you see that cedar tree down there at the end of the field, the garden? And I said, yeah. He said, okay. He said, I want you to go straight toward it. Take your eyes off of it. You just look at it. He says, if we need you to stop or anything's going on back here, we'll yell at you. Don't be looking back. Just go straight toward that cedar. Focus on it. And so that's what I did, you know. And when I started off, I looked at that cedar, and man, I was honed in on it, you know. And the road was a lot straighter. And when we need that focus. We need to focus on Jesus. And in Philippians chapter 3, I like how the Message puts this, Philippians chapter 3. He says, friends, don't get me wrong. By no means do I count myself an expert. This is Apostle Paul, an expert on all this. And I've got my eye on the goal where God is beckoning us onward. Now, I was going to read more, but that's it. That's what it is. And then Peter, in 1 Peter chapter 2 says, to this you were called because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. And so just like I was to focus on that cedar, we're to focus on Jesus and follow after. If we just stay focused on him, if you do that, and you follow Christ and focus on him, you're going to find some suffering. There are going to be some rocks along the way that's going to, you know, kick up and turn things sideways and get you off crooked and messed up. That's okay. You're not in anything that God didn't know about. You're right where he wants you. You focus on him. You obey him. That's what we need to do. Even in our most difficult moments, we need to be able to persevere in the race of faith so we can finish. In 1955, Winston Churchill, near the end of his life, was asked to deliver the commencement address at a Britain university. And he was so weak at the time, they said they had to help him to the podium. And when he got to the podium, he took both of his hands and he grasped the podium and he put his head down, what seemed like for an eternity. And finally, he lifted his head and he looked at that crowd. And in the same voice that had called Britain back from the brink of destruction many years before, the last time he spoke publicly, he said 9 words that I think are of utmost importance. He simply said, never give up. Never give up. Never give up. Maybe some of you have been thinking about leaving the church, giving up on the call that God has for you in your life. Maybe you've been doing that without even realizing it. You know, you've already been giving up. Maybe you've been, thinking about leaving your spouse or going back to the bars or the drugs or the places and the pleasures of this world that you experienced before. I just want to tell you, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't quit. Don't quit. Run to Jesus. Focus on Jesus. Move toward Jesus. Kneel before Jesus and get rid of all those things that hinder you from doing what God wants you to do. I want you to be able to say with Paul at the end of your life, I fought the fight. I've kept the faith. I've finished the race, right? Man, I want to be able to do that. I want you to be able to do that. He says, finally, there's laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me on that day. And never give up. Never give up because you're discouraged. Be encouraged by all those who've gone before you, who've been where you are, have gone through what you've gone through, on the things of God. Never give up because of sin. Jesus has taken care of your sin. You don't have to worry about it. Just follow Jesus. Focus on Jesus. Never give up because Jesus is on His throne. And He's in control. Focus on Him. Look unto Him and don't give up. Run and do not grow weary. Run and do not faint. Run and allow Him to carry you to the end. Never give up. Never give up. Never give up. We have the opportunity right now for you. Maybe today you need to take a step of faith. Maybe today is the day when you begin your journey of faith and you surrender in faith to the Lord Jesus Christ. You take that first step in the race. Or maybe you've been in the race, but things are so messed up you don't know where you're at right now. And right now is the time for you to just look to Jesus. Give it to Him. Turn away from that sin. Let the people that love you most hold on to you and help you walk. You know, I remember a race several years ago, maybe the 70s or 80s, I believe it was a marathon, and this runner kept falling, and he had injured himself so badly when he came, I think when he came into the last area of the race, his father realized what had happened. He come out of the stands, put his shoulder on him, and let his son lean on him, and he finished the race that way. Sometimes we need that. And that's what we need to be for those who need it. And that's what we want to be for you, if you need it. And so right now, if the Holy Spirit is speaking to you, and you're convicted, and you don't know what to do, or if you know what to do, right now's the time to make a decision for you. You know, I know there's some folks here that are struggling with things, and you know, my biggest fear is that you leave today the same way you came in, and with no victory. And so that doesn't have to happen. And so if you are struggling, you know, let's make the right decision this morning. Let's make that right now. And we're going to sing through again. Maybe the Lord's calling you to follow Him in believer's baptism. Maybe you need to make a profession of faith public for the first time. Or maybe another time. Or maybe you just need somebody to love on you, you know, and help you. Maybe you need some direction. Somebody just kind of help you get your eyes back on Jesus. You don't even really know where to look, maybe. Look, we want to help you with those things, okay? And so don't leave defeated. Because if you belong to Jesus, you've already won. Amen? So let's live like winners.